wonder why our minds chase status or obsess over luxury? This is Mind Matters. I'm Ivana, shining a light on the psychology behind our everyday pursuits, from money stress to social standing. I explore how we think so we can reshape our world from the inside out, because in the end, every mind matters. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mind Matters. I'm Ivana, your host, writer, and curious brain behind this podcast. I like to think of this show as your mental shortcut. I dig into the science, break it down, and make it easy for you to use. In today's episode, I'll explore how our brain chemistry and psychology influence the way we negotiate. Whether it's a major business deal, the battle over bedtime with your kids, or figuring out with friends where to go out. Negotiation is everywhere in life. We'll spend the next few minutes or so looking at the neuroscience behind these interactions. To keep things fun, I'll give some nicknames to certain scientific terms so we can talk about them in a more relaxed way. Don't worry, I'll still drop references here and there, but hopefully I'll keep it easy to follow. Why our brains and negotiations are a perfect match. Think about the last time you had to negotiate something. Maybe you wanted a raise, or you were trying to convince your teenager to do their homework before watching TV. What you might not realize is that beneath all the words, your brain is in high gear, releasing hormones, activating certain areas, and biasing you in ways you might not expect. Negotiation isn't just about persuasion tactics or having the last word. There's real biology there. Now, let's meet the brain chemicals. First up is oxytocin, aka the trust booster. Oxytocin helps build trust and social bonding. Zach, Stanton, and Amati, 2007, found that when our oxytocin levels go up, we become more inclined to share and cooperate. It's like the glue that fosters good vibes in social situations. Picture it as a friendly sidekick in your brain that says, hey, maybe we can work together. Why it matters in negotiations. When you genuinely connect with the other person by maintaining eye contact, using a warm tone, or simply being polite, you may subtly increase their oxytocin levels, and yours too. That can lead to more generous and collaborative outcomes. How it shows up at home versus work. If you're trying to get your partner to agree on this weekend's plans, a little trust booster can help you both be open-minded. In a business deal, you might see it at play in the rapport building phase. Handshakes, small talk, or sharing a personal anecdote can all help. Meet cortisol, aka the meltdown molecule. Cortisol is the hormone your body releases in stressful or threatening situations. While it's a useful alarm system, it can also get in the way of calm, logical thinking if it stays elevated too long. Why it matters in negotiations. High cortisol can lead to tunnel vision. When you feel cornered, you might dig in your heels instead of looking for creative solutions. How it shows up at home versus work. At home, meltdown molecule might surface when you're exhausted and your kids are screaming. Suddenly, you find yourself yelling back. At work, it might kick in if you feel unfairly pressured by a client or boss, causing you to shut down or become overly defensive. Then there is dopamine, aka the celebration chemical. Dopamine is tied to our sense of reward and motivation. Think of it as the sparkly confetti cannon in your brain that goes off when something feels good or might feel good if you keep going. Why it matters in negotiations. When you believe you're getting a great deal, dopamine spikes, reinforcing your motivation to seal the agreement. It also fuels competitive energy. Trying to win can be exciting. How it shows up at home versus work. Buying a car or negotiating a salary might feel like a game you want to win. At home, maybe it's the thrill of persuading your roommates that your movie pick is the best for movie night. When you succeed, bop, your brain confetti goes off. And of course, there is testosterone, aka the challenger chemical. Testosterone often gets linked to aggression or dominance, though it is a whole other topic I plan to cover soon. Picture testosterone like a bold football coach in your brain, pushing you to go big or go home. Why it matters in negotiations? Higher levels can make you more assertive. This can be useful if you need to stand your ground, but it also risks turning a discussion into a standoff if you don't keep it in check. How it shows up at home versus work. At home, the challenger chemical might spur arguments over who does chores or how late the kids can stay out. In the workplace, it might lead to very firm negotiating tactics when you're trying to land a contract or ask for a raise. Now I want to talk about your hidden brain influencers or cognitive biases. A bias is like a mental autopilot, quick and convenient, but sometimes it steers us off course without us even noticing. These biases are completely natural, and they can help us process a million quick decisions daily. But they can also cause you some problems if you are not aware of them, and they can backfire in negotiations. Let's start with the fixed pie bias, or thinking there's only so much pie bias. Glimcher, 2003, noted that when we assume resources are strictly limited, we shut down the part of our brain that might come up with creative, integrative solutions. If you're stuck thinking, for me to gain, you must lose, you'll miss out on shared wins. Maybe at work, you're dividing a budget and assume every dollar you don't get goes to someone else's department. You refuse to consider ways to pool resources for a joint project that could benefit both teams. Moving on to the anchoring bias, or getting hooked on the first number bias. Famously, Tversky and Kahneman's research showed that the first offer or figure put on the table dramatically shapes how you look at the following offers. A car salesperson quotes a high initial price. Even if you know it's inflated, you might end up with a final deal not too far from that number. The anchor has worked. Or suppose you want your kid to clean their room for at least an hour each weekend. If you initially say 2 hours, they might negotiate you down to an hour, which still meets your goal. It's all about that initial anchor. And finally, there is the loss aversion and the endowment effect, or don't take my stuff bias. We humans hate losing more than we like winning. This is tied to the amygdala, a crucial emotion processing part of the brain. Let's say you have a closet full of clothes you rarely wear, yet you find it painful to donate them because they're yours. Or in any negotiation, offering to give up something you feel ownership over can feel disproportionately tough, like you're suffering a big loss, even if it's a fair trade. Let's bring this back to our everyday lives first. Personal negotiations aren't always about signing contracts. They might be about who takes out the trash, when to have a difficult conversation with a loved one, or which restaurant you pick for your weekly get-together with friends. In family or close relationships, there's usually strong emotional investment. That can mean lots of oxytocin fueling the desire to maintain harmony, but also a risk of cortisol spikes if something feels threatening. Take a parent negotiating bedtime with a toddler. The meltdown molecule, cortisol, can skyrocket if the child screams, "No!" and the parent worries about tomorrow's early morning. Meanwhile, the trust booster, oxytocin, might help the parent try gentle techniques like hugging or calmly explaining. Sometimes it works, sometimes not, but knowing these dynamics might keep you more patient. Practical tip for personal situations. Use emotional labeling. Saying, "I see you're frustrated," can help diffuse a tense exchange with a friend or family member. It shows empathy, which often encourages that trust booster to flow. Noch and colleagues, 2006, found that our brains really light up when we sense unfairness. So if you're feeling like you always do the dishes, your personal meltdown molecule can surge unless your partner acknowledges your effort. A small gesture of gratitude, "Hey, I really appreciate all the dishes you've been doing," can tamp down stress and keep negotiation channels open. Now let's shift to the conference room. Business negotiations often involve closing deals and signing contracts, allocating budgets among departments, or making strategic partnerships. The difference in business settings is usually the higher perceived stakes around money, reputation, or a career trajectory. That means higher potential for chronic stress and more intense cortisol release. Over time, elevated cortisol can impair flexible thinking and push people into either aggressive or overly cautious territory. Testosterone, the challenger chemical, can lead to a more aggressive stance in business. If you feel you must come out on top, especially in a zero-sum scenario, you might rely on more aggressive tactics. Sometimes that works, but in many cases, especially when you want a long-term partnership, a purely competitive approach can backfire. Recognizing that you can appeal to a counterpart's trust booster, oxytocin, is often a good strategy. Anchoring wisely. If you're making the first offer, set a slightly ambitious anchor, but keep it within reason. If it's too outlandish, you might lose credibility and trust. Framing and reward systems. People respond better to a gain frame. For instance, say how a partnership can boost the bottom line by 20%, rather than focusing on what might be lost if the deal fails. That sets off the celebration chemical dopamine for everyone involved. And what's really fascinating is that these biological factors, the trust booster, meltdown molecule, celebration chemical, and challenger chemical, operate in both personal and professional settings. The main difference is the stakes and the emotional environment. Manage your own state first. When you sense that meltdown molecule ramping up, rapid heartbeat, rising tension, take a moment. Deep breathing or a quick mental check-in can reduce stress. In business, maybe take a bathroom break. At home, politely say, I need a second to gather my thoughts. Build trust to increase collaboration. Simple rapport building techniques work almost everywhere. Whether it's complimenting your child's effort on homework or acknowledging a co-worker's valuable contribution, these small gestures can create a more cooperative climate. Watch for brain influencers. If you're not making the first offer, mentally prepare a counter anchor if the other person's number is too high or low. And reflect on whether you're resisting a proposal simply because you hate the idea of giving something up. Is it really as big a loss as you think? Time your negotiations. Plan important discussions when everyone is relatively calm, rested, or at least not swamped by other demands. That's when the brain is more open to reason and less likely to lash out. And always harness positive framing. Emphasize what the other party stands to gain. Try lines like, I think we can both come out better than we started, rather than, if you don't do this, we both lose. That difference alone can trigger the more collaborative sides of our brains. Negotiations, at their core, rely on how our brains handle trust, stress, competition, and reward. Once you realize your own internal chemistry is guiding you, often without your awareness, you can adopt strategies to stay balanced. The main points to remember: the trust booster, oxytocin, helps people find common ground. The meltdown molecule, cortisol, can flood your system when you feel threatened or stressed. The celebration chemical, dopamine, spurs you on when you sense a reward. The challenger chemical, testosterone, can embolden you but might push you toward conflict if not managed well. And don't forget about our cognitive biases, those mental shortcuts that can trip us up if we're not watching for them. Whether you're bargaining for a raise, trying to decide whose turn it is to do the dishes, or negotiating with a toddler about bath time, remember that you're not just arguing. You're navigating a complex web of neurochemistry and psychology. The good news is you don't need a science degree to make this work in your favor. Just a little awareness goes a long way. Take a moment to check in on your own emotional state before and during negotiations. Notice if you're feeling defensive or stressed. Try to frame your requests positively. Show empathy. And if you feel yourself starting to unravel, give yourself a breather and come back with a clearer mind. I hope today's conversation offered a down-to-earth look at the neuroscience of negotiations and gave you some tips you can apply both at home and at work. It's amazing how understanding these hidden drivers can help us shape discussions in healthier, more productive ways. Remember, negotiations don't have to be battles. They can be opportunities to find mutual benefit if we keep our brains in check. Thank you for tuning in to Mind Matters. I'm Ivana, and I can't wait to explore more about how our minds shape our daily experiences in future episodes. If you found this helpful, feel free to share it with a friend, family member, or colleague who might be negotiating something in their life, which is pretty much everyone. Take care, keep learning, and I'll talk to you soon. I will link all the studies and references in the show's description. If you found this discussion insightful, please consider sharing it with friends, family, or colleagues. Let's keep the conversation going about how we can make this affluent corner of Europe a healthier, more equitable place for everyone. Until next time, remember, your mind matters, and taking care of it is the best investment you'll ever make.